Hi, it's Crow. I didn't feel like doing my makeup or taking off Riley's eyeliner. Riley was just fronting. But I wanted to make a little addendum to my previous OSDD-1 video. No, not OSDD-1 video. To my previous OSDD video. This video isn't edited or scripted, so enjoy that. If you're confused, just go to that video. This is not an introduction, but I just wanted to say that someone pointed out to me in our Discord, link below, that OSDD-1 in the ICD is not just considered partial DID, but it's also just considered full normal DID. In the ICD, DID doesn't require amnesia, at all. You can have DID in the ICD without amnesia. Amnesia is typical in DID, but yeah, so if you have what would be called at the DSM, not in the DSM, in the community, OSDD-1B, 1B doesn't exist in the DSM, you would just have normal DID in the ICD, and then if you had what we call 1A, then you would probably be partial DID in the ICD. And partial DID is still a dissociative identity disorder. This also brings me back to my point where I hate the term complex dissociative disorder. I'll probably talk about this more in a different video, but complex dissociative disorder is a term that people use to refer to the dissociative identity disorders, that being DID, PDID, and OSDD-1. They're not inherently more complex than any dissociative disorder, and that's really incorrect and offensive. And barely any clinical papers have ever touched the term because it's bad and insulting. You're going to tell me that OSDD-1 is inherently more complex than OSDD-2, inherently more complex than DPDR. No, it's not. They're not special. They don't need to be special to be valid. But anyway, here's a good term. Call them dissociative identity disorders. They are both OSDD-1 and DID and PDID, actually, they're all dissociative identity disorders. They're all and I mean, okay, in the DSM, OSDD-1 is defined by the fact that it's basically DID. That's the whole thing. So call them dissociative identity disorders. They are literally the same disorder in most of the world. And it's really offensive to imply that they're more complex than other dissociative disorders, and it's also wrong. And yeah, I mean, if you still want to use OSDD-1 for your own system, especially if you're in the United States or Canada or a place that uses the DSM, yeah, obviously, it's still the diagnosis there. But personally, I'm just going to start saying DID when I mean a dissociative identity disorder. And I mean, you can complain about this being OSDD-1 erasure, but the thing is, first off, again, OSDD-1 doesn't exist in most of the world, and also the issue here is OSDD erasure in general. OSDD-1 is the most represented in the conversation about OSDD, and that is actively causing people a lot of harm. It's doing a massive detriment to our community, and it's also creating an artificial divide between DID and OSDD-1. It's allowing people to continue insisting that DID is the most severe, which it's not. It's like any other disorder. It can be mild, it can be extremely severe, and so can OSDD-1. The divide is artificial, and we don't need to divide the two. We just need to expand awareness on what DID is, and what DID is a very broad diagnosis. DID is a very broad diagnosis. And also, again, DID in most of the world is inclusive of OSDD-1. Using DID instead is really only erasure if you refuse to accept that these are very similar disorders, and also that America isn't the entire world, because it's not actually. The DSM doesn't cover everywhere on the planet. The DSM is ridiculously rigid. There's no reason for OSDD-1 and DID to be separated. Also, another thing, you can switch between having OSDD-1 and DID because, again, they're basically the same. They're the same disorder. And in the ICD, that's why they're the same disorder, because you can fluctuate from having multiple distinct alters to not having distinct alters but still having amnesia to having all the alters but not having amnesia. Because it's the same thing. There's literally no reason for them to be separate. And I really hate that everyone's idea of OSDD as an entire diagnosis is just DID. And I especially hate it because people keep talking about how OSDD-1 has to be separate because DID is worse. And it's not. It's not worse. It's just different. So that's been a rant. That's been a small correction. And yeah, I'm going to stop saying OSDD-1 when I'm not talking about someone who specifically identifies with it. Because it sucks. I don't like it. I would like to do everything I possibly can to have people not think of DID, PDID when they hear the word OSDD. So cool. Enjoy that. Yeah, we need to, like, stop forcing, like, these disorders to be considered, like, separate, honestly. The divide between DID and OSDD-1 is, as I mentioned in that video, just ridiculously artificial. There's no reason for it. It's just bad. It's just bad. It's ableist. It's gatekeepy. It's very America-centric. It's extremely Anglo-centric to insist that they must be considered separate. It's just kind of like... Sorry, I'm not editing this video, so there's a little awkward pause, but it's like... I don't know, I feel like the divide is very rooted in medicalism, where it's like, DID is the worst trauma disorder ever. It's not. I talked about that more in the main video, which you should watch if you haven't already. And it's, like, there's no reason other than OSDD-1 isn't as bad, which is wrong. I know many people with many dissociative disorders. I have known people with OSDD-1 who almost died because of it, and I've known people with DID who basically only missed, like, a couple work meetings because of it. Like, it's a spectrum. And I know plenty of people who flip-flop between the two. And I also know plenty of people who have what we'd call OSDD-1 in the United States who have DID. So yeah, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. I think it's better to expand the meaning of DID and stop gatekeeping it. Much better to do that than to insist on OSDD-1 getting its own special little box. It's kind of the same way I view ADHD. Like, ADHD has subtypes, but it would be ridiculous to say that the subtypes can't be the same disorder, especially because people can switch through subtypes, which is also part of why I like the DID, PDID thing, because PDID is basically a subtype of DID. Not quite. They're, like, separate diagnoses, but they're the same disorder. Just, like, it's kind of like PTSD and CPTSD. Like, they're the same dude. Like... Yeah, it's really only erasure if you don't broaden your understanding of DID is the thing. Because we're not erasing the experience if we're acknowledging more of the experiences. The divide erases the experiences of people who switch between those two presentations, because they're very similar presentations. And also the divide is contributing to the erasure of OSDD in general as basically just DID light, which it's not. So yeah, and also, like, just since that last video, I've had multiple systems, like, mention that they think they have another OSDD, because that video exists. And I'm upset that I made basically the first video on it. I am upset that so many people who have been in system spaces for, some of them for years, are only just hearing about this now. I'm upset that so many people were surprised there were other kinds of OSDD. I'm upset that we consider OSDD-1 an OSDD. I'm upset on behalf of everyone with an OSDD who has not had the terms for their disorder. I'm upset for everyone with OSDD-1 who's been constantly told that they have it better than people with DID, a disorder that they basically also have. I'm upset for everyone who switches between the two, who was not allowed to like, call it that. For everyone who doesn't live in the United States, who has a diagnosis of DID or partial DID, for everyone outside of the United States who's diagnosed with OSDD and does not have partial DID or DID. And I'm upset for myself, who didn't know OSDD-3 fucking existed for ages, which would have, honestly, like, saved me so much pain. It would have saved me, like, probably multiple near-death experiences. It would have saved me a ton of very confusing therapy sessions, and knowing about OSDD-2 would have saved a lot of people, especially Ramcoa survivors, who the people forcing the divide claim to want to protect. It would have helped so many of them realize how they're working and that they can get help, and that their experience is common enough to be in the fucking book. It could have helped a lot of people with OSDD-4 who didn't know that trances were real, who looked up catatonia and didn't know it fit them, who have just been in plural communities being told that since they don't have alters, they can't know the experience of dissociation, that it's not as bad for them, when they'll go into multiple hour trances and can't fucking move because they dissociate so bad. Like, sorry, I'm getting mad. I've been talking for 10 minutes, but like there's a reason I care about this. I care about this a lot. And it's not because I hate people with OSDD-1. I don't hate people with OSDD-1. I don't hate people with DID. I used to be kind of one of those because I didn't know I had OSDD-3, which was presenting like those two. But the thing is, this hurts everyone. Like, this hurts people with DID and OSDD-1. It especially hurts people with OSDD-1, which again, it's DID and partial DID. It hurts those people who are told that they cannot claim the label of DID, which best describes their experiences, because their amnesia is not bad enough or because they're not separate enough. Often, even like people internationally who do not have amnesia but have alters or don't have distinct enough alters will be told they can't say they have DID because we are so DSM centric, we are so America centric in this community, we are so DID centric in this community, and we put it on such a pedestal, we're so medicalist that we can't even fathom the idea that DID isn't what we think it is, that OSDD isn't what we think it is, that other people can have other experiences, and that other people live in different fucking countries. So, yeah. I'm sorry I yelled. I'm sorry I got mad, but like I'm mad, and I'm mad. I'm just mad. I'm probably gonna make a more edited video on this later. I just wanted to post the follow-up real quick before I forgot. Also, I know I fucked up the trigger warning in the last video. I'm trying to figure out how to fix that. But like in the last video, if you're going to go watch that now, which, sorry if you went through this whole thing without context, I say trigger warning for 10 seconds. It's actually more like a minute. So just keep that in mind. Yeah, I'll see you around. Thanks for listening to me be mad. Take care.